As we limp over the line of another international break, our panel of betting experts offer up their best picks from not one, not two, but 5 different domestic competitions. We'll have the regular pod treble and attempt to squeeze about as much juice as possible from the lemon that is the freshly opened 2026 World Cup England squad odds market. All that and more on today's show. Hello and welcome to the Football Betting Pod powered by Betting Expert. I'm your host, Daniel Jenkins, joined as ever by Betting Expert's football editor, Sam Ingram. How are you doing, Sam?
Hello, Dan. I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. How you found the international break? It's a bit of a weird international break this time around. I don't know what it is. I think it's probably the changing schedule, but we've got like a game for Barcelona on the last Thursday of the international break. There's no Premier League until next week. It's a bit of a weird international break.
Yeah, I suppose it is. And you definitely need to keep that in mind in terms of betting this weekend, like which players are returning, which clubs might be struggling with that. For example, Liverpool have got Merseyside derby coming up and they've got players from all over the world coming back. Alisson's coming back injured. Luis Diaz played last night in Colombia. Darwin Núñez played at altitude in Bolivia yesterday. So that's just one example. But in terms of betting over the international break, it went pretty well. The Liechtenstein boys, they came through, lost 3-0 and 2-0. Didn't really trouble the opponent's go, which is no surprises at all. I had a bet on Chad, didn't I, last week, which was maybe the worst bet I've ever put on the podcast. They were truly terrible. I watched the whole game and it was absolutely awful, but then I backed against them in their following game and they lost 1-0 last night. So that kind of made up for it. But yeah, interesting break. Obviously, Thomas Tuchel as well.
Yeah, we'll get to that shortly. I saw the video going around of Chad Striker having a bit of a wild performance.
Seen it. I saw a tweet yesterday as well. I don't know if it's the same striker, but one of their strikers, it was their debut for their country at 40 years old.
It looked like his debut in football,
So
I'll be honest.
We made a big thing over here about Dan Burns' debut, but I had nothing on Chad's 40-year-old up top.
Also joining us on the pod today, Scott Thornton, back again. How you doing, man?
Yeah, all good. Enjoy the international games. Recovering from obviously South Sudan's 98th minute equaliser yesterday against Sudan, which was the big game over the break. And I was expecting a cards fest, it just didn't happen. But yeah, it's nice to get some club football again.
What bet did you have on for Sudan versus South Sudan? Cards.
I didn't have a single bet on for it. I didn't have, but it was on. It was on, which is even worse. There was no corner markets, no cards markets or anything.
It was on where? Where were you? Sudan?
Yeah.
Like, were you in Sudan?
It's amazing what kind of games you end up watching on the international break. Like, I've watched all sorts and not proud of it.
Yeah, I thought it could be feisty. I just put it on basically on the 365 app. Nothing in there, no bet there. It was probably a low point, but yeah, I enjoyed it.
Back after the international break is our resident Italian expert, Daniele Fascella. How you doing, man?
Hello, all good, thank you. Yeah, good international break. The competition that nobody wanted to be in, the Nations League, in the end became the competition everyone wanted to be in because the games were absolutely amazing, all the quarterfinals. So really enjoyable, but a bit weird one, really, with the World Cup qualifiers already starting and some of them already ending in the other side of the world because already 6 teams qualified. And be prepared for Uzbekistan against Congo maybe at the next World Cup. I wonder what the Americans gonna make out of it. I love if it would be played at the Giant Stadium in New York. Yeah, that goes to show that sometimes bigger is not better. But going back to Italy, 6th of June, trip to Norway. First game of the qualifier, an easy trip to Norway against Holland. If we lose that one, get ready for another summer in front of the TV. Okay, let's go on with the pot.
Be looking forward to that. Do you want to touch upon England? Big story in the break. I mean, England make up 25% of this podcast, but they should make up 100% of the conversation. So Thomas Tuchel's first game in charge. What did we think? What do we think about the squad that he chose? And then we'll lead that on to the opening of the World Cup 2026 England squad odds market, which is something I think we talked about every week for about 12 weeks in a row last year, Sam.
I love
It's
it.
a great market.
It's a great market. I lose money on it every time it pops up. Yeah, in terms of the break and Tuchel in England, I think it's really hard to dissect too much from it. Like, we've played Latvia and I forgot who else did we play?
Albania.
Albania. So yeah, exactly. This is what I mean. So what can you really take from 2 games at Wembley where you are dominating the ball? You're not really receiving too much of note from the opponent. There wasn't really much to go off, to be honest. And Daniele made an interesting point there of nations now maybe wanting to be part of the Nations League, because between now and between the break just gone and the World Cup next summer, England's best team they'll face is Senegal. In terms of the road to the World Cup, that's just not ideal. Like, we need a higher level of opponent to really test ourselves and for Tuchel to really see what's at his disposal.
In fairness to Tuchel, I feel like he criticised the wide play after the first game. He's obviously knows exactly what he wants from the team, but it's so difficult to set your team up to break down 2 banks of 5 like that and just not recycle possession consistently, which does get boring to watch. I don't think that's on England. I think England were creative enough. There was enough runs from deeper areas to make sure they got the openings. I'm quite scared about the prospect. I think England could get over the line next summer, I'll be honest.
No, but I think from England we've seen 50 or 60 times this sort of games. England, Albania, England, Montenegro, England, Bulgaria, with all the due respects, we learn absolutely nothing. If anything, we learn that sometimes England can actually self-inflict a little bit of pain, because both Latvia and Albania even came close to score, which I think it would have been a really bad start for Tuchel, but really in line with what we expected. A lot of control of the ball, playing through the thirds, 2 clean sheets, which was Tuchel was used to do at Chelsea. And, none of the last 5 permanent England managers have won the initial game by more than 2 goals margin. So that was exactly what we would expect. Maybe a tougher game against Serbia, but I am in some camps. They need to maybe try to organize friendlies against tougher opponents in the way to the World Cup. Otherwise, I think they'll be as prepared as anybody else. But obviously Spain, Germany, Portugal, and France, at least they'll play each other in June.
Well, they have organised friendlies against Senegal and Wales, Daniele. So we'll see how
Sorry.
those go.
Sorry.
We'll see how those get on.
Right, that's true.
Let's bring in the betting angle here, because this odds to make the squad for the World Cup 2026 market came out recently, and as Sam said at the start, we love it on this show. So let's dig into it. Who wants to take first pick at the rather long list of names that are on there?
So just a bit of background to this market. If you're like a long-term listener, you probably be aware, but I bet on Tammy Abraham to make I don't even know what tournament it was a few years back, to make the squad. His knee exploded, and then the subsequent tournament I bet on Ivan Toney to make the squad, and then the FA banned him for gambling for a fair few months. So they both didn't come through. So I'm going to apologise to Lewis Hall, who I like the look of now at 2.50. That stood out for me. Right now, he's probably England's best left back. Obviously, he probably would have been in the squad if it wasn't for injury. Lewis Skelly took his place. He's obviously in the mix as well, but he is a central midfielder. I wonder if Arteta's going to keep him at left back, Dan, or move him away from there in due course. You probably be able to shine a little bit more light on that than me. Do you reckon he's there to stay, or?
I don't think. I wouldn't be surprised if he kept him where he is at the moment, because he does spend a lot of his time in midfield anyway. And I was saying to you earlier, I think the fact that Tuchel went for a sort of underlapping left back was because the underlapping right back in Trent Alexander-Arnold wasn't playing. So maybe if he's back in the squad next time around, maybe Tuchel would opt for a sort of more traditional left back, which would bring in someone like Lewis Hall, odds of 2.50 to make the squad, which I think does look really, really good.
Yeah, and interestingly, I did a bit of digging. Lewis Hall only became a left back after Thomas Tuchel played him there as a 17-year-old at Chelsea. So he was usually a midfielder throughout his time at the academy, but Tuchel's view was that Hall's attributes were best suited to left back. So Tuchel knows the player, likes him at left back, and he's only going to get better if you're looking at next season. He's improved massively defensively under Eddie Howe at Newcastle over the last year. So clearly lots of work on the training pitch. And next season, you would imagine Newcastle in the Champions League, and they'll probably make a bit of a splash in the Champions League. If you look back to last season, was it AC Milan? I think they might have lost at home to AC Milan, but
They beat
battered
PSG.
PSG.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So you'd reckon that Lewis Hall would be in the starting 11 for those kind of games, and if he can prove himself at that level, then there's no reason why he won't be in the World Cup squad or be playing in the games before we get to the World Cup. So yeah, 2.50, that was a standout for me. One of the concerns is Ben Chilwell. I know Tuchel likes Ben Chilwell, and he's had a word with him and said he is in plans in terms of the England squad. He just needs to get regular game time and probably move club in the summer. So that's maybe a bit of a concern, but yeah, I like the price on Lewis Hall 2.5.
I think this time the exploding knee syndrome is more likely to come for Luke Shaw as well, isn't it? So that would help you out.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Hopefully. Well, not hopefully. That sounds bad.
It is an interesting position because obviously last summer we saw Kieran Trippier was playing there, wasn't he, under Gareth Southgate, and they've had difficulties in that position for a while. England haven't been able to really find somebody to hold it down, and I think now Lewis Hall, what is he, 20? Lewis Skelly, 18. I think is two very different players there who could occupy the position.
It's gone from a real problem spot to now being, we've got a few young lads coming through, so that is good news. Hall, Lewis Skelly, Tyrick, Mitchell, and I will say one other thing. I was going to come on here because I thought he'd be a massive price and pick Michael Cooper, Sheffield United goalkeeper, ex-Argyle. He's absolutely brilliant. Sheffield United will come up this season, you'd imagine. I think he'll prove himself in the Premier League, and I would not be surprised if he's sniffing around the England squad, but he's 8-1. If he was 20s, 30s, then it was going to be my pick, but he's not. So I thought I'd mention it just in case he makes it in the squad, and I can clip this up on Twitter or something.
We shall certainly see. Scott, you had your eye on another player on this market.
Yeah, I was surprised he wasn't in this first squad from Truthful. So Adam Wharton. I just think England don't have anybody else in that midfield, which is very, very talented, who has his skill set. He's very good at picking the ball up from deep areas. He's got a very good range of passing, but in the deeper areas of the field. And I think Rice is just better when you move him slightly further up the pitch. Arteta quickly worked that out at Arsenal, and I think similar will happen for England. In the first game against Albania, they started with Curtis Jones next to Declan Rice and then Bellingham more advanced. Second game, they went with Bellingham deeper, but I do think Bellingham's probably more suited to the 10 role. And just the fact that Adam Wharton gives you that skill set, the ability to play out from the back, and he's comfortable dropping deep to pick the ball up, just offers something else. The fact that Henderson got on the pitch after the selection was berated says quite a lot to me. So I do think there's a place for Adam Wharton to not only get in the squad, but to start some games in the next World Cup as well.
I think
agree with that. Massively.
Looking at some of the younger players as well, they could be 1 or 2 years older by the time this squad comes around. So certainly something to bear in mind, a lot of future planning. Daniele, any interest in this market? We've got Big Dan Burn at 3.75, which is standing out to me.
There is Big Dan Burn, yes, which probably is going to be there or thereabout. I'm not sure. If you look at the statistics, sometimes the first squad that is picked by a manager is very different to the squad that goes to a tournament. I do remember even with Italy, some players then tend to fall. The most interesting one is Rashford, 6-5. If he moves to another club, permanent move, maybe away from Manchester, it could be interesting because, of course, on the left-hand side, he provides something else. I wouldn't touch Dan Burn, as I said. And then between Solanke and Ollie Watkins, both at 8-13, so pretty much 170. I don't know who to pick, really. On form, you would say Watkins, but Solanke has been unlucky this season with injuries, and again, maybe changes a manager at Spurs, and he might have a better season if Spurs kick on a little bit better.
It might be worth keeping an eye on some players that could be moving in the summer as well. Liam Delap out of 4.0 could be a bit of an outside pick. Jamie Bino Gittins as well could be on the move in the summer. Big full season next year. Well, those prices could come right in, but we'll keep an eye on it. Sam, probably another 15 discussions on that in the next 15 months.
Oh, yeah, easily. easily.
Plenty more chances to lose your hard-earned money. Let's kick off with the tips, please. Scott, starting with you, looking at a match in the FA Cup.
Yeah, when you said about we've got a nice variety of competitions, I felt quite bad because I've gone FA Cup across the board for my three, so I'm grateful for everyone else bringing some variety. But I've gone Fulham versus Palace, over 30.5 throws in the match and over 16.5 tackles for Palace. The FA Cup is wide open this year, so really exciting finish. On the back of two Manchester Derby finals, it's nice to see teams involved that it would mean a great deal to win the FA Cup. Admittedly, City will want the FA Cup because it's the only thing they can win this season. But for the other teams, it would be a monumental success. Palace obviously made the final, maybe 2016, was it? It's a while back now. They lost in the final to Man United, and Fulham, obviously, this season been very good under Mark Silva. They continue to establish themselves in the top flight. But silverware is such a rarity for these types of clubs that it's going to be a massive, massive game. And I think that lends itself nicely to throws and tackles. Two fiercely contested fixtures between the sides this season. 2-0 away wins in both of them. Home advantage does account for a lot here. Maybe, maybe not. Those meetings saw 30 and 35 throws, so 30 just below the 30.5 needed. But the FA Cup does generally see more throw-ins than the Premier League, so I'm not too worried about that. Palace's Premier League matches, for example, have seen 35.11 throws, and in the FA Cup that rises to 41.33. Fulham Premier League matches, 32.48 throws, in the FA Cup, 34.33. So I'd expect an increase on those numbers here, particularly if there's one goal in it going into the last 20 minutes and a frantic approach will take charge. Glasgow side have made the most tackles in the Premier League with an average of 21.71. Fulham are forcing only 14.62, but in the two games against Palace this season, the Eagles have managed 25 and 19 tackles, so quite comfortably above the over 16.5 line required for this bet. Marco Silva's side are also forcing an average of 21.67 tackles per FA Cup game, so there's not really a lot to worry about in terms of the tackles, and I'm hoping the narrative behind the FA Cup and the way that these two teams will really be targeting silverweight will just increase those numbers even further. Ideally, we don't have a runaway victor, and I just don't see that happening here.
Yeah, you've had quite a few bets on cup competitions in these sorts of markets this season. I wanted to ask, obviously we see quite a few mismatches, teams from different leagues, that really affects the game state. We see, you've spoken in the past about having so many throws when it's sort of a lower league home side, a Premier League away side, or if there's a team that keeps a lot of possession, we see those throw lines go way under. How does that change if it's an all Premier League clash or a same league clash in a cup competition? How much does that affect things? And do we see, do the games go very similar to what we see in the Premier League, or is it a big difference in the cup?
The one that sticks out to me is West Ham versus Villa. I remember watching that game, and that went a few over what the Premier League one would suggest we'd see, and it was above the line. So usually we see an increased amount. It usually goes around 2 or 3 over, which would be ideal here because the league matches did hit the criteria. Well, almost one of them. And I just think that because we're so late in the competition as well, that adds to that fire. And knockout football, isn't it? It just increases the stakes so much, and it's not points on offer, and goal difference doesn't matter. It's all about getting through the tie. So I'm just hopeful that later on is where we see the throw-ins rack up after ideally a fast start in the opening 15 minutes, because these ties do tend to settle down. These are two teams that are familiar with each other, but the line is there to be took on, especially given it's the FA Cup.
Yeah, we'll certainly see. Scott's first of two bets on the FA Cup this week is over 30.5 throws and over 16.5 tackles for Palace in Fulham versus Crystal Palace. That's a 1.80 with a full unit on that. Sam, over to you. Let's bring you in here, not looking at the FA Cup, looking at a match in the Championship.
Yeah, so I've gone for West Brom plus 0.25 Asian handicap at 1.89 versus Norwich. I think I've not got the price in front of me. I think they're 3.3 to win away in Norwich, which stood out as a pretty big price. West Brom obviously above Norwich in the table and looking at playoffs. And I think they'll end up getting playoffs this season. International break-wise, West Brom only had 4 internationals away. Hegum, Mikey Johnson and Isaac Price stayed in Europe, and Grady Diangana was in Africa, but Diangana's only started 12 games for West Brom this season. Norwich had a few more away around the globe. Sargent has had a week in the States. Cordoba too, he played against Sargent for Panama. Slimani in Africa. So that's something to consider when approaching this weekend. What kind of shape these two clubs in, and where are they travelling back from? Sargent obviously being Norwich's main goal scoring threat. West Brom a few weeks back played Leeds at Ellen Road, and my main takeaway from that game was, I'm gonna get West Brom on side if possible in the near future. They really impressed me, to be honest, at a venue which poses a pretty daunting task for Championship clubs this season. They played through Leeds' press pretty well, and they'd have gained confidence from that, going away to the best team in the division and matching them in terms of result and performance for large spells. And since then, West Brom have gone to Burnley. They've scored a goal at Turf Moor, which we know has been almost impossible for quite a long time. And they kept Burnley largely quiet. They're capable away from home this season, this West Brom team. In the game straight after Leeds, West Brom won 1-0 at home to QPR, which is a decent result, but it was made more impressive because they received a red card just before half-time. And then they didn't really let that one-man advantage for QPR cause them too many concerns. So they've been impressive recently. And like I said, they've got the playoffs in their sights. Norwich, they're not out of the playoff race, but they're not positioned ideally. And I understand why West Brom are the price they are. Betsy will probably have Norwich as favourites as well as the bookmakers because of the underlying data, especially at home. Only Leeds have accumulated a bigger expected goals total than Norwich's 35.2 XG from 19 games, which is 1.85 XG per 90 on average, which is obviously a great return, but they've only won 8 games at Carroll Road out of 19. So the West Brom plus 0.25 Asian handicap would have returned a profit in 11 of 19 matches in Norwich for their opponents this season. And at the end of the day, this is obviously a price thing, as is every bet we put up on this podcast. If West Brom were arriving on a minus handicap or a draw no bet line, then I wouldn't be interested. I'm expecting this to be fairly tight in terms of quality and chances from either side. So to have an advantage handed to one of these teams in the form of a plus 0.25 line. I'm going to take West Brom on, who, like I mentioned recently, have impressed me in the Championship.
Betsy line for this game, as you said, Sam, it does have Norwich as the favourites there. Projected goal total for this game is 1.31 to West Brom's 1.04. 0.27 goal difference, which does fall quite similarly in line with what the bookmakers have. You mentioned the internationals going away for Norwich. It's not something I usually think about with the Championship. Is that just me, or do you think that's a bit of a gap for a lot of bettors, not really considering internationals going away during, for teams outside of the Premier League?
Well, yeah, maybe a lot of people don't consider it, but like on a personal level, if I was, I know it's a bit different, if I'm not a professional footballer, but if I was in America and I was playing out there, or I had to get to America and then I'm coming back from America to Norwich straight into training, then maybe the game the next day or the game in 2 days' time. It would definitely take a percentage away from my output, 100%. And Sargent, we're talking about here, he is their best player. So look, I don't know if it's going to affect him too much, but it's something to bear in mind, definitely, especially if you've got a few players away who would usually be in your starting 11.
Yeah. Daniele, any thoughts on this, Ben?
No, I think Norwich have been so inconsistent this season. Third best attack, second worst defense, if I'm not wrong. They've only kept 2 clean sheets at home at Carroll Road, so very inconsistent. But this is a bit of a this year for Norwich. Follow them fairly closely. It's a bit of a gimme, with the new manager with Torup. They almost give him a clean slate, and they understand that they need 2 years to build up the team. If you look at the Norwich squad, they're very young. Between loans and permanent signings, they got an average age of 21, 22, with a few veterans, if you like, Angus Gunn and, of course, Josh Sargent. But I think it takes a lot of time to adapt to playing the Championship, especially when you're a foreigner, when you come from abroad. So I don't think there's a lot of pressure on Norwich. Next season is going to be difficult. Parachute payments are going to end, and I think that's really when they have to be really good at scouting, and when the new manager Thorup needs to deliver. So yeah, with Norwich, I think it will continue the roller coaster, score, concede, probably no win many games until the end of the season.
Yeah, Daniele hit the nail on the head. They are just so inconsistent. Like, you don't really know what you're going to get from them, other than they're all right for a goal, and they're usually good for a goal at the other end too. So 7 of Norwich's last 10 games have seen both teams to score, including their last 6 games. And heading into the international break, they lost their last 2 games, 3-2 at home to Sheffield Wednesday, where they were leading 2-0.
Yeah, they
So
were.
some comeback from Wednesday, and 2-1 away at Bristol City, which
But
is no disgrace.
But this is a team that has got the top goal scorer in the division, Borja Sainz. Now you might have to want to look at the stats, but how many times the team with the top scorer in the team in the league is not within the top 8, top 6? I think you struggle to find them. Normally goals get you to those places, and Norwich can't really buy a win because of the lack of consistency at the back, the lack of experience. So yeah, I think the best bet from now on is always over 2.5 to score Asian handicap, as Sam has mentioned.
Yeah, well, hopefully we do see some goals, and hopefully we see quite a few for West Brom, because Sam's first single of the pod on a match is West Brom plus 0.25 versus Norwich. That's a 1.89 with the full unit on that. Daniele, over to you, looking at a bet from Serie A.
So that's Juventus taking on Genoa on Saturday. My pick is double chance 1x, so Juve not to lose, but a low scoring game under 3 goals, together 183 with bet 365. And I'm going to put a unit and a half on this one, considering it's not quite doubling your stake. Juventus under the new manager, of course, sacked Thiago Motta last Sunday, brought in the former player Igor Tudor, over 100 games with them, former Lazio and Marseille manager. Now, if there is a man who can take a team halfway through the season, that's Tudor, because that'll be the 8th time in his career that he's taking over a team within the season. But it's a massive earthquake at Juventus. Things have gone wrong from Motta in the last 3-4 months. There are back-to-back defeats in Serie A, and I remember 2-3 weeks ago we were talking about them potentially challenging for the title. They were -6 from Inter. I think that was an optical illusion. They won 5 games in a row against beatable opponents. Yes, they beat Inter, but in between they crashed out of the cup competition against PSV and Empoli, who are probably going to get relegated in Serie A. So that didn't really have the responses. But, at the end of the day, the numbers condemned him. Only 43% win ratio, the third lowest for a Juventus manager. Juve never had so few points in the table since 2010, 2011. But this move is a very un-Juventus-like. In 127 years of history, they sacked the manager only 10 times. And he never gone particularly well. So if you think about the likes of the English club, the British club, Manchester United, Chelsea, only 10 times Juventus sacked the manager. What can Tudor do? Very little, I think, in 9 games. He's hardly going to change the style of play. He loves a more direct way of playing. He loves his team to press high. Last season, Lazio, when he took over in very similar circumstances with 9 games to go, were mid-table in terms of passes per defensive action. Then he took over and they finished third for passes for defensive action, which means they allowed very few passes to the opponents before launching a press. The good omen for Juve is the last season Tudor took over 9 games to go, and they average Lazio 2 points per game. Now, Betsy projections give Juventus a points tally total of 70, which means they will finish fourth, and is at exactly 2 points per game from now on. So there could be a bit of a manager bounce for them. Having said that, I don't think they're going to lose. Genoa is a tough nut to crack. They've only lost 3 games since Vieira took over. Only lost 1 game by one goal margin, 3-1 against Roma. I watched them at the San Siro not long ago when Inter struggled to beat them 1-0. Difficult game, I think, for Juventus against unorganized sides. I don't think they're going to lose. I don't think they're going to debut with a defeat. It could well be a draw. Under 2.5 goals, I think, is the bet. That's why the line is under 2.25. And a bit of trivia for you: Genoa hasn't won in Turin since 1991, with Thomas Curavi scoring the winning goal. So it's not exactly easy, but I think if not now, when for Genoa, you will wonder to get a good result from the Juventus Stadium.
Well, hopefully they don't, as far as this bet is concerned. Betsy absolutely loves it. Daniele, projected goal totals for Juventus 1.62, 0.64 for Genoa. Expected goal total of 2.26. So certainly on side with you here. I do want to speak about Juventus, Thiago Motta obviously leaving the club. What do you think went wrong, and where do you think leaves Thiago Motta as a manager. Obviously, a lot of admiration for his work with Bologna before going to Juventus. Where do you think that this leaves his stock in Italian football?
I think Thiago Motta will go on and have a good career, a successful career. This career is just only started, and he achieved qualification to the Champions League with Bologna last season, which is remarkable. However, he has come with a lot of expectation, and after that Juventus decided to part way with Max Allegri in a very strong way. There's been almost the need for a revolution, and the debate became so hatred with what Allegri represented and the football that he was proposing that it looks like everyone was waiting for the Messiah, Motta, and everyone was waiting for somebody to completely revolutionize Juventus. Now, I think those were false expectations. Bologna's Motta were far from spectacular. They were a team that were keeping the ball, defending with the ball, and choosing the right moment to attack. But they were built on solidity. Juventus are the same, really. Second for ball possession in Serie A, only sixth for touches in the opposition box, only fifth for expected goals. Really, the attacking numbers have improved that much. And since Juventus have lost Gelson Bremer back in September against Leipzig and failed to replace him with a like-for-like defender even in January, that's where the cracks have appeared. But then Motta's got his own faults as well. He's changed the formation 39 times out of 42 games. He changed 7 captains, freezing out Danilo, who was the Brazil captain until a couple of months ago. Juventus have changed the armbands 7 times, and Motta has done a lot of experiments. I don't know if when you were a kid, you play like the little chemist, at home, changing things, bottles, stuff like that. That's basically what Motta was doing at the training ground. Every time changing something a little bit. This day Weah plays as false nine, tomorrow plays as a fullback. Ilditz is in and out. McKennie can play as a false nine. Nico Gonzalez switches. Too many experiments. You can't be the little chemistry in Juventus, in Italy's most idol club. So I think that's what he paid. But I'm sure he'll go on to have a good career either in Italy or.
I think I did a bit of reading into it because obviously it was quite a hyped up appointment, let's say, and some of the player sort of ID would have seems to have got him a lot of criticism. The fact that Douglas Luiz just hasn't played and they paid a hefty fee for him, and then they've loaned out like Moise Keane is obviously the second top scorer, and they had him at the start of the season, and then freezing out Vlahovic as well, which.
No,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it doesn't seem to have gone down well. They've obviously brought in Colomwani.
Juventus have spent almost 400 millions if the move of Colomwani and Francisco Conceição are permanent, and they have changed 13 players, so there's been a 26 players turnover. And because there was that need, that the revolution was needed, but perhaps it wasn't needed. Perhaps a lighter touch was needed. Wojciech Szczesny has confirmed to be a very good goalkeeper with Barcelona. He was shipped. Di Gregorio is not a bad goalkeeper, but did really Juventus need a new goalkeeper? Did they really need to sell Keane and Fagioli to Fiorentina, who were outstanding when they beat them 3-0? Did they really need to change so much? But because they wanted a clean slate after Allegri, I think they went too far. However, maybe time with Motta was needed. We'll come and see. But going back to the players and Vlahovic, Tudor likes to play with a front three, so maybe expect Vlahovic and Colomwani to play together with Ilditz behind them. Of course, that will mean the wing backs will have to sacrifice quite a lot, but it's going to be a change of system, probably a back three. And Vlahovic, who's never had a good feeling with Motta, score with Serbia in international in Austria is 243 to score any time against Genoa. He hasn't scored in a while. Colomwani hasn't scored since February, by the way. I think those two probably look good for a goal. They are due a goal.
Yeah, we'll certainly see. Sorry, did you say that Igor Tudor had come into new clubs midway through a season 8 times as a manager?
Yeah.
I remember him playing. Like, how has he even had 8 jobs? Like,
No, well, he started very young. He was assistant manager to Andrea Pirlo at Juventus in 2021. Then he had managed in Croatia before. Then he was assistant manager at Udinese and managed there, managed at Verona. So he's a man that, he basically made a very quick transition from playing to be a manager. Well respected, well regarded in Italy. Yeah, look, it's a big he doesn't like coming on. Funny enough, he doesn't like coming on midway through the season because he likes to have a pre-season, of course, as most of the managers do. And last season, Napoli approached him midway through the season, and he refused to go there because he Four didn't have time. But when Juventus call and it's your former club and is Italy's most important club, really, you cannot turn it down. Funny enough, Tudor contract is until the 30th of June, which is right after the group phase of the Club World Cup. So, all is up in the air. He might not be there. He might stay. Juventus are already thinking about Conte or Pioli. So, yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about this much longer.
Yeah.
Well, so they could get Conte from Napoli. That's an actual feasible.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Very
That's the
interesting.
idea.
Very
That's the idea.
interesting.
I'm sure Napoli fans will love that because the rivalry is intense, isn't it?
Yeah,
Between...
Napoli.
We'll see.
Right.
We'll
It's
see.
okay. They wouldn't mind. I'm sure they wouldn't mind.
It's amazing that he's only 4 years older than Thiago Motta. It just he feels like he should be about 20 years older than him with the TV and
Who Tudor?
yeah,
Looks
he
old.
looks years older as well.
But do you know? I tell you another one that is funny. Do you know that Ivan Juric? Can you picture him? He's the same age as David Beckham.
Oh,
It looks like his grandpa.
don't
No?
be a manager, people. Don't be a manager.
Same age. I swear. Same age.
That's crazy.
There you go.
Daniele's first single of the show is 1x. So Juventus did not lose when they played Genoa and under 3 goals in the game. That's a 1.83 with Bet365. He's gone for 1.5 units on that as well for Igor Tudor's first match in charge of Juventus. Sam, back over to you and back to the Plymouth and back to your old stomping ground, which is the Asian handicap lines of Plymouth Argyle.
Yeah, I'll keep it brief. We know how bad Argyle are, and we know how it's probably worth opposing them when they're playing away from home. There's been many games recently where we've gone into it thinking this is a must-win for Plymouth Argyle. If you lose this, and then you've pretty much got no chance of staying up. Hull, Sheffield Wednesday, and Derby recently stick out in particular. They lost them all. They had 3 shots, and bear in mind, like they need to win these games against teams down there in the table to really have a chance of staying up. They went away to Hull, had 3 shots, lost the game. They played Sheffield Wednesday at home. They were 2-0 down at half-time, had 0 shots in the second half at home to Sheffield Wednesday at 2-0 down, which is nothing short of a disgrace, really, when you're scrapping with, well, when you're supposed to be scrapping with everything you've got to try and stay in this division. Before the international break, Derby beat Argyle at home. And that was really the nail in the coffin for a lot of supporters. I think many people thought they were down anyway before that, but losing to Derby at home is unforgivable, really. And if you're losing to those teams down there in the relegation picture at this stage in the season, then you deserve to be relegated and go down. So now 6 points from safety, terrible away form, and rarely looking like putting teams to the sword. It's not mathematically done, but it's looking bleak. Argyle have won only one game away from home this season, which was against Pompey the other day, a couple of weeks back. But if you look a bit closer into that game, you'll see that they generated 0.25 XG accumulated alongside that 2-1 scoreline, which shocked everyone. I had one of my biggest bets this season on Portsmouth that day, and somehow Argyle's got their only away win in the season, which was brilliant. I'd probably have Watford on a minus 1.0 Asian handicap line here. So I think the minus 0.75 is a bit of value, and there might be temptation from some people to look at the tables this weekend and get behind a team right down there with nothing to lose. You're looking for points to stay up, but if that's your angle this weekend or weekends coming up, I would recommend probably looking elsewhere.
Yeah, Betsy has this pretty much on the nose of the bookmakers here. 0.76 projected handicap difference between the two teams. 1.7 expected goals for Watford. 0.94 for Plymouth. It's we had that ban on Plymouth related bets a couple of weeks ago, Sam, and since then it has gone downhill a little bit. You spoke about it a little bit then, but there have been some sides sort of slip into that relegation battle a little bit. Cardiff have slid down, Swansea have slid down as well. Been quite a few teams sliding down this table. Is there any hope? And as you said, looking forward,
No.
okay, and looking forward, obviously maybe a bit of a change of approach could be coming when maybe the shackles come off Plymouth and they start flying forward and scoring a load of goals. Is there any hope?
Yeah, I love your optimism, Dan.
I don't
I
think there
don't
is.
think
I'm
so.
just
I think
asking.
that's no. I think that's one spot now in the championship which is decided. I know. Look, I get it. Derby have just won 3 on the bounce. Now they're looking like they can stay up. Yeah. And that feasibly could happen. But when you're in a position like Argyle, when you're so bad away from home, where you rarely look like scoring, you don't have the strikers, you don't have the players in those forward areas to really cause a difference at this level. We've got Ryan Hardy who can do that. If he's given an opportunity, he can finish. So can Mustafa Bundu. But in terms of Mustafa Bundu, the international break hasn't been kind. He's probably been our best player in the last 2 months. International break hasn't been kind. He went off in the first half for Sierra Leone after scoring. Went off about 40 minutes in their first game. So he might be injured. The latest news is that he could be okay. Elsewhere in the international break, Maxi, the big Ukrainian at centre-back, he did get injured for Ukraine, didn't play a game. He got sent home before Ukraine even played their first game. And he is out for the season. Probably Argyle's best player. Much needed at centre-back. He's been a breath of fresh air since he came in January, and so he's out for the season. And away from Argyle, you've got Watford. They're chasing the playoffs now. If you win against Argyle, which they are more than capable of, results dependent, that could have them 3 or 4 points off that final playoff spot this weekend by the time Monday rolls around. So it's a big game in that respect for Watford. A win here really sets the tone for that final push from April onwards. They've not been blowing teams away themselves, but I do think they're a few levels above this current Argyle side. I don't know if you'll remember, but the head-to-head earlier in the season saw 2 brilliant strikes from Andre Gray. One came over his head on the volley, which was just beautiful. But either side of that, Argyle was second best and deserved to lose. Watford would have racked up 2.5 XG, something I haven't got the data in front of me, and Argyle would have got nowhere near that. Wouldn't have been anywhere near 1.0 XG. So I fear that now going away to Vicarage Road in this position where they're pretty much down and out, pretty much, I fear that the difference between the two sides will be amplified and they're not going to be able to harness that piece of magic. I'm not sure where that magic would even come from. So all very bleak and depressing from me. I'll be in the away end on Saturday as well. So for 1,400 Argyle fans are travelling up. When you're pretty much down, I think that's really good going. So I'm hoping this bet gives me something to cheer about. I won't be audibly cheering in the away end, but internally I'll be cheering. And you can't buy alcohol at Vicarage Road in the away end either, can you? So I've not even got a beer to wash down the 2-0 after 20 minutes.
There's that
So
bar called the Odd Fellows that's like not far from the ground at all, isn't it? So maybe you'll just have to retreat.
maybe I'll just leave at halftime. Yeah, good idea. Yeah, so yeah, Watford minus 0.75.
If you do spot one happy Plymouth fan in the away end when Watford beat Plymouth 2-0 on the weekend, then it could well be Sam. He's gone for Watford minus 0.75 versus Plymouth of 1.87 with a full unit on that. Scott, over to you for another FA Cup quarter-final. Bournemouth versus Man City.
Yeah, this is probably the game I'm most looking forward to. I'd say whoever wins this will probably be the favourites to win the FA Cup, and the fact that it's sort of like a shootout, Man City favourites, yes, but the fact we're talking to Bournemouth have really got a good chance here speaks volumes of how well they've done this season. A fact I've been absolutely loving is Bournemouth's expected points. They're the third highest in expected points in the Premier League. It isn't changing. They're underperforming that metric, of course. They're not putting away their chances, but City ranks 6th on expected points. So Bournemouth have got enough about them here to go and beat City. They've only played once this season, and Bournemouth did win 2-1. That was their only meeting of the campaign at this ground, coincidentally. But my bet's going to be over 25.5 shots and under 26.5 free kicks. The thinking is such a massive game again. Bournemouth matches are seeing plenty of shots. The meeting earlier in the season did see 30. There's been 26 shots or more in the last 4 head-to-heads with an average of 29.25. So that line that will be set here for over 25.5 looks really, really appealing. The FA Cup, another trend we can look to as well as the throws is unders on the free kicks. We see less fouls in FA Cup games than we do in Premier League matches. From the third round and beyond, so when the Premier League teams have sort of got involved, average amount of fouls per FA Cup game has been 20 compared to 22.26 in the Premier League. So I'd expect fewer here This bet has won in the last 3 meetings between these sides, and City's cup data for fouls is very, very appealing. City matches have seen 15 fouls on average in the FA Cup, but even if we take into account their Premier League data, because obviously they're taking on a Premier League side here, their match has seen the second fewest fouls with an average of 17.38. 365's fouls, free kicks marker, say, also takes into account offsides. Recent head-to-heads have seen 2, 3, 2 offsides, so not a lot to worry about when we're talking under 26.5. And we're looking at really around a 17 foul mark for this game. So over 25.5 shots and under 26.5 free kicks. Let's hope they let a lot go. It's an end-to-end game with two attacking teams looking for a real big prize here, which is a place in the semi-finals, and we're looking at the favourites for the win in the trophy. It's a massive game, particularly for Bournemouth, who have never won silverware, along with Brighton, who also have a great chance in the FA Cup, and City, a trophy-less season is unthinkable, so it's also massive for them.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you thought the winner of this match would go on to win the cup. So glad you brought that in. But this match, this fixture back in November was really the sort of beginning of the downfall for Manchester City, wasn't it? It was their first Premier League defeat in, I think, about 10 or 11 months away at Bournemouth. Since then, they've only won 4 away matches in all competitions. Manchester City, Leicester, Ipswich, Leyton Orient, and Tottenham last month. Scott, is there a pretty good chance that Bournemouth go on and win this match? They really fancy their chances, won't they?
This is a massive one because of City, they'll be able to get up for it so well. In the Premier League, they've not been able to perform to what their underlying data suggests they should. But in a shootout with City, I think they've got a real chance here. But I'd be reluctant to bet on Bournemouth, to be honest, just because it's Man City. It's such a big game for them. The Champions League is firmly in the rearview mirror now. They're not playing as many games. For the likes of Marmoush and Gonzalez have come in and are having an impact. So it really is a pick-em game. I find it difficult to pick a winner here, and that's why I've sided with shots and unders free kicks. To be honest, I think it'll be a thoroughly entertaining game with both teams going at it hammer and tongs. It would be quite nice to see Bournemouth win it, to be honest. But to answer your question, do I think the winner of this will go on and win the competition? Potentially, but I'm liking the look of Brighton lately as well. Brighton have won five matches on the bounce, and it's also historic for them. They've enjoyed a meteoric rise since obviously Tony Bloom became involved in maybe 2009, and silverware would really underpin that.
I feel like I need to jump in. Scott did say that Bournemouth have never won silverware, where in 1907 they won the Hampshire League West, and then they also won Division 3 in 1986 and the Championship in 2014. So I just feel like I need to.
Yeah, I should probably have clarified major silverware, but then I wasn't aware of the Hampshire Trophy, which obviously is major silverware. Yeah.
Who was the final with?
I forgot.
Sorry.
Forgot.
Who scored? I think I remember that goal. That was a nice overhead kick.
Scott was over 150 throws in that game.
Yeah, the nice 2-3-5 formation coming into play.
Over 25 yellows, yeah. Scott's second match-based single of the match is Bournemouth vs Manchester City, over 25.5 shots and under 26.5 free kicks. It's 1.80 with a full unit on that. Daniele, over to you. Looking at a Premier League match for next week. So we're covering quite a broad mix of games and dates with this one.
We're taking a temporal leap here into the next Premier League game, which is a midweek round, by the way. And Manchester City host Leicester. A struggling Leicester wasn't won since the 26th of January. Now, on this one, I take an approach looking at the post-international break games, and I know Manchester City play, of course, in the FA Cup. But broadly speaking, there is a myth that must be debunked, and I think we've done our part in this podcast, that after international break, normally big team struggles called players come from all over the world. Well, since last season, the European powerhouses, and with this we define the biggest clubs that play in the European competitions, the Premier Champions League, so not Tottenham, but Manchester United, if you're wondering. 58 wins, 11 draws, and only 5 defeats post-break. So everyone remembers the the crucial defeats. For example, Liverpool losing to Forest this season 1-0, Arsenal losing to Bournemouth 2-0, and Manchester City, but there was a 4th defeat at home against Tottenham in a difficult situation. If you move over La Liga, for example, in the last 2 seasons, Barcelona and Real Madrid have recorded post-international break 10 wins and 3 draws. They never lost. Also because rarely they play each other after international break. They rarely play top sides after the international break, so it's often a kind fixtures. But these are the patterns. When 2 top teams play each other after the international break, normally is a low-scoring game, as it happened many times in Italy, as well as last season, Man City drawing 1-1 with Liverpool, 0-0 with Arsenal as well. So these are like the oddities in those recurrences. So why are we going for Manchester City? First of all, Leicester have had more players on international break than Manchester City, 8 against 7. I'm only counting senior players. Betsy projects the goal total for Manchester City at 245 and the goal difference at 172 in favor of Manchester City. And what's the easiest way or the best way to score against Manchester City? On the break. Well, Leicester City are the only team in Premier League this season to haven't scored a single goal on a counter attack. And I think that's a damning stat for them going into the Etihad. The Asian handicap has been set now to minus 225, but until 2 days ago was minus 2. And I think the bookies realized this could have been way too short. Manchester City have won only 4 Premier League games by more than 2 goals. So obviously with a minus 2, you will only cover, if they win 2-0, you will only get your money back. But they won the last 6 against Leicester, scoring 15 goals and conceding only 4. I think this is a win for Manchester City, regardless of the results in the FA Cup. As a Betsy, 75% chances of victory. I'm gonna go for Asian handicap -2 for City, 177. I mean, I don't think you'll ever find such a big price for an Asian handicap for City at home against a team that's gonna go down.
Yeah, I mean, if this was taking place last season or the season before, it'd probably be around 3.5, wouldn't it? If it was Man City versus Leicester. So yes, Betsy does agree with you, Daniele. Projected goal in this game is 2.45, 0.73 for Leicester, putting that goal difference of 1.72 between the two teams. So it's the only concern for me here is City have that big FA Cup match on the weekend versus Bournemouth, potentially could. It's certainly in danger of them losing that game. It's going to be a really big one. FA Cup is their last big chance of winning silverware this season. Yes, they've got to qualify for the Champions League. Yes, they've got to secure it. But is there any concern that there could be a bit of a hangover from that FA Cup match?
No, I don't think so. Squad rotations, 5 substitutions, these things all come into place, especially after busy period with the international break. I think that's where really you can use the squad. They don't have many major injuries, and Leicester in a such poor form. We've seen them in the game against Manchester United. They conceded many chances. I think I'm not saying this is going to be a turning point for Manchester City season. I think it's still very disappointing. But with 9 games to go, I would expect them to finish the season well, probably hold on to the 3rd spot, qualify for the Champions League, albeit of course there are all the FA charges and everything, the points deduction that might loom, but I think that's gonna be the case.
And just looking at Leicester recently, I was considering win to nil. Man City, that's at evens. Considering that, but I was a bit scared, so I left it. But the thing that I really liked is Leicester recently away from home. They've registered 0.10 xG at Chelsea, 0.37 xG at West Ham, and 0.33 xG at Everton. So now going to the Etihad, we know this is not the Manchester City we've grown accustomed to over the last decade or so. But still, Leicester shouldn't have too many chances, and you would imagine in favour of Daniele's bet that Man City will have their chances and they should take 2 or 3. So yeah, I like it.
I'm quite impressed with how many ways we've come up with calling Leicester, Ipswich, and Southampton bad over the course of this podcast. We've had to get creative with it but I do think we're at the stage now where we can just say, yeah, Leicester are bad, so we're going to back We're going to back Man City. Yeah.
Honestly, like a lot of my betting approach in the past couple of months has just been like opposing the newly promoted teams, and it's become my FPL approach as well. Anytime someone's playing against Leicester or Ipswich, I'm just chucking a player in. Yeah, working quite well.
If the pod treble goes down this week, maybe we should just commit to the treble being against the newly promoted 3 next week.
It's a
It's an
great
option.
shout.
Yeah, it'd be the quickest one we've done. Danny Ellie's second bet is Manchester City versus Leicester. He's gone for Manchester City -2 in the Asian handicap market. That's a 1.77 on Bet365. Again, going for 1.5 years.
Yeah.
On to this week's pod treble. And Sam, do you want to kick us off with a match for a newly promoted side?
Bournemouth versus Ipswich over 3.0 Asian goals at 1.92. This earlier on in the season, their most recent head-to-head. It was a bit of a ding-dong, really. It ended 2-1 to Bournemouth at Portman Road. The expected goals total hit 4.60 XG. So Ipswich took the lead in the first half before they then bundled another goal in from a corner. But that was subsequently ruled out by VAR. And then just before the half-time, Bournemouth hit the post with an effort. And then in the second half, they turned it on, equalised, snatched a winner in injury time. But there could have been plenty more goals than that 2-1 scoreline suggests. There were 25 shots inside the box in the entire 90 minutes. So kind of a nod towards what this could have been. The reasoning around taking on this specific goal line is the scheduling and Bournemouth potentially taking their eye off the ball. We've just spoken about the FA Cup fixture against City. It's a really big deal for the club. It's their fourth chance at silverware in their history. And that game arrives on Sunday with Ipswich travelling down south on Wednesday evening. So not ideal for Andoni Iraola's squad. Also, obviously, they've got to deal with players coming back from the international break too. It might be a bit of a juggling act for him. And there is not many that will give Ipswich any hope of staying up, but they won't be thinking like that in that dressing room. And McKenna will have targeted this game and they'll fancy their chances of causing a bit of an upset here because of the scheduling and because of the previous head-to-head. So, yeah, beat Bournemouth, raise morale, and who knows, maybe you can stay in the Premier League. I don't see it. I don't buy it, but that will be the thought process in camp. And if Ipswich can find the net here, I think we might coast past that over 3 goal line because we know Bournemouth have it in them to hit 3 themselves. So, yeah, over 3.0 goals at 1.92.
Yeah, like that. Scott, over to you.
Yeah, bit of a disclaimer as well. I feel like I've been a bit harsh on Ipswich there. They've, back-to-back promotions. It's no surprise they're out of their depth. So, it's just maybe a little bit unfair to put them in with Southampton and Leicester, yeah. But they have been particularly bad, haven't they? But anyway, back to the FA Cup. Back to the FA. I didn't want to get on the bad side of any Ipswich fans. But anyway, back to the FA Cup. Preston versus Villa. Aston Villa to win over 26.5 throws in the match. A reason why the FA Cup's so exciting this year. It's a big opportunity for Villa as well. They've established themselves, obviously, as a Champions League club again this season. But silverware, major silverware, before Sam mentions anything else, has been elusive. And Villa are a massive club in their own right, but an FA Cup win this season would still be viewed as a massive success. And they really won't let up against Preston. They've had 4 straight victories before the international break, 1 defeat in their last 9. Preston obviously have won their 3 matches to get to this stage, but they're yet to face Premier League opposition. They've got 2 wins in their last 8, so I do really see Villa coming away with a victory here. And then to get a nice price on that, we've gone with over 26.5 throws. And as Dan touched upon, in the FA Cup, when these Premier League sides go away to, I would say, lower league grounds, not particularly with Preston, but the point still stands. The home crowd will be up for this, and you'll see those flurries of throw-ins as they look to get the ball forward because they just don't have the quality to play through Aston Villa's press. Villa matches have seen the fewest throws in the Premier League with an average of 26.07, but this number rises to 30.33 in their FA Cup matches. So it's 30 plus in all 3 of those cup matches as well. Whereas Preston FA Cup matches have seen a whopping 49.22. So over 26.5 looks very doable here, given the fact that Preston just don't have the quality to play keep ball against Villa for any length of time. They're going to have to play percentages, play direct balls into the channels and hope for the best, really. Preston are just not going to want to discard the chance to progress in the FA Cup. But Villa Villa have the quality and Villa have the edge. We'll just see some throw-ins as a consequence of press and trying to make it competitive.
Certainly be keeping an eye on that. Daniele, close it off with your selection.
So that's a Thursday game. Barcelona against Osasuna. Osasuna Asian handicap +2, and that's 170, but with Betano, better odds than with Bet365. 1 unit. Yes, Barcelona have been handed bad hand by La Liga because they got 2 games, first Osasuna, then Girona, in less than 72 hours time, which is considered the threshold. Big polemic because that game was postponed against Osasuna because Barcelona's doctor passed away, so they could only play now after the international break. But this is going to be probably the first time this season that Hansi Flick is going to be without, for sure, Rafinha, who only missed 1 game from the start, which was when Barcelona lost 4-2 at Osasuna, recording only 0.75 expected goals, and potentially even without Lewandowski, who picked up an injury with Poland in the first qualifier, scored and has to be subbed off. Now, he never been without both 2 players, the main sources, the main threat. Of course, there is still Yamal, so it's going to be quite unusual for them, considering also they're going to be without Ronald Araujo. Inigo Martinez might be fit to play at the centre back. Is a makeshift Barcelona lineup. This is a big game because if they win, they go +3 on Real Madrid, and then they go Girona at home. We touched before on the fact that big teams normally do not lose after the international break, so I'm not expecting Barcelona to lose against Osasuna, although they did against Leganes earlier in the season at the Montjuic. However, the visitors have only lost 3 away games by more than 2 goals this season. They're not nowhere near the quality they had last season, but for me, to go there and get trashed on a Thursday, quite unusual game as well. You can't imagine, they're going to be a big crowd. They're going to be up for it. Barcelona got far more important games coming up. To go with a +2 Asian handicap for Osasuna seems to me a sound strategy, bearing in mind that Barcelona could win, but not necessarily trash those opponents. If they win 2-0, by the way, you get your money back. So 170, Osasuna +2.
Can I just say that a Thursday night pod treble pick away in the new camp is some serious cojones, like fair play, but
you think they're going to win
not
3-0?
even close.
You think they're going to win 3-0?
No. Yamal played the full 120 against the Dutch as well. That front line is decimated, and we've seen what they were like without Yamal. I'm going with it. I like it.
No, Yamal might be there, but
early kickoff.
They'll win.
Yeah,
I think
he'll
they'll
be
win.
tired though. You'd imagine
They'll be tired.
Yeah.
They'll win. I think they'll win. But 3-0.
It's with these Asian handicap lines. You think you got to ask yourself, would I back the opposite? And I would not be going for Barcelona -2 in this game. Wouldn't necessarily.
I like the bet, and we've had success with the early kickoff on the treble.
That's the earliest we've gone.
Yeah, it's the earliest one we got.
This has to be the earliest ever.
It's a Thursday, Sunday, Tuesday treble. It's a bit unconventional, but we'll see. Let's have a recap of the bets, please. Sam, do you want to kick us off?
I bet on West Brom +0.25 Asian handicap versus Norwich at 1.89. Watford -0.75 Asian handicap versus Plymouth Argyle at 1.87, and also Bournemouth versus Ipswich over 3 goals at 1.92, or for 1 unit on Bet365.
Did you want to track your squad pick, or is that just? Should I make a separate spreadsheet for that? Because you're going to do so many over the next year and a half.
Yeah, go on. I'm going to have a fair few. Yeah, should we say 2 units?
2 units.
Lewis Hall 2.5. May as well. What? How far away is the World Cup here? We've got
15 months,
a year, and so I can't really go for 1 unit at 2.5. Really is a bit of a waste of time. So we'll have 2 units.
Scott, over to you. Your picks, please.
Okay, so I'll be taken back at what I'm saying on the Wharton thing now. So sorry. Fulham versus Crystal Palace. Over 30.5 throws and over 16.5 tackles for Palace at 1.8. Bournemouth versus Man City, over 25.5 shots and under 26.5 free kicks in the match at 1.8 as well. A unit on both. And Adam Wharton, 2 units at 1.8.
Coward. I was expecting something huge.
It's when you said, I can only have 2 at 2.5. I was like, do I change that?
What was he? Sorry, Scott, 1.83.
1.83, yeah.
1.83. Good stuff. Daniele, your singles, please.
So for me, it's Juventus Genoa double chance 1x and under 3 goals at 183. Manchester City Leicester, Manchester City Asianati a -2 at 177, both 1.5 units.
And Daniel is going for Osasuna +2 in the Asian handicap market versus Barcelona as well. Scott's going for Aston Villa to win and over 26.5 throws in Preston versus Aston Villa. And Sam is going for, as he said, Bournemouth versus Ipswich over 3.0 goals for our pod treble. If you put all three of those bets together into a treble, you'll get odds of 5.41, which we will be tracking a quarter of a unit. If you are going to be using any of the bets from today's show, then please gamble responsibly. Only bet what you can afford to lose. Thank you as ever to Sam Ingram.
Thank
you
you
very much, Scott Thornton.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Daniel Fiscala.
Thank you. Speak soon.
And thanks for me. We'll be back after the very lengthy pod treble on Thursday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ish.
Thursday-ish.
Yeah, I suppose we've covered the Premier League games now. Well, started to, so it's gonna be a late one next week, isn't it?
Good outro.
Are we done?
Yeah. That's a good
All right.
outro, actually.
All right. Bye.